fundraising thing. So in the event, I'm just trying to make a good practice of, in the event that I freeze or drop off the meeting because of an internet issue, Marty will just automatically make you the co-host.
Sounds good. Ugh, that sounds great. Okay.
Thanks. Hey, Katie or Dennis, I should have, this is probably obvious. Are either or both of you presenting tonight in advance of the public hearing? I assume you are.
Didn't plan on it. So there's really nothing, no presentation. Do we need
Dennis,
to have
were you?
something?
Typically before the public hearing, we have a staff report.
Yeah, you don't have to have a PowerPoint, but you should outline the changes that are proposed in the ordinance.
Okay.
Just kind of what the general reason is, et cetera.
Okay, I can do that.
You'll do that, Katie?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that, and basically the majority of the stuff is all on the referral, so it shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, thanks.
And Brian, I think we already had more information at the Public Works Committee meeting where Katie presented some of the information or all of the information.
Yeah, and Katie could reference that. We do need a staff report though at the council meeting.
Yep.
Marty, are you ready to go?
Yes, ready.
Okay. could you go ahead and put up the slides about registration and such? Thanks. So good evening. I will call to order the City Council, Missoula City Council meeting for August 17th. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening in the mayor's absence. The city clerks put up a couple slides. The first slide about how to register for this webinar format, as well as the link to where the agenda and related documents are. Obviously, we continue to meet in a virtual environment, and several meetings ago, we moved to the webinar format. If you could go to the next one with the public participation info. Thanks. So there's a number of ways to provide public comment, both during the meeting tonight as well as outside of the meeting time. If you're a participant in the webinar, you can raise or lower your hand as a participant. There's a way on iPhones and Android phones to raise and lower your hand. And folks who dial in can use *9 to raise or lower their hand. Likewise, we have the City Council voicemail that sends a voicemail to all council members. That's 406-552-6012. And then the council email, likewise, it sends an email to all council members, council@ci.missoula.mt.us. Thanks, Marty. And first item is roll. We have all council members with the exception of Mr. Hess and Mr. Ramos. We do not have minutes to approve at this time. They'll be provided at a later date from the August 10th meeting. And our next item is the schedule of committee meetings. We have a full day on Wednesday, and Ms. Rabine, if you could go through the schedule.
Just a minute, I'm trying to see if our meeting is streaming on eScribe. I'm getting this little turny circle.
Sure.
I think we're going, even though my software doesn't indicate we are. Let's talk about committees this next week. They're going to be of long duration. Land Use and Planning Committee is going to meet this Wednesday in virtual session via Zoom webinar from 8:20 in the morning until 11:20. Public Works Committee will meet from 11:40 to noon. Land Use and Planning Committee will do a second shift in the afternoon from 12:20 to 2:50, and Budget Committee of the whole will round out the day from 3:10 until 5 p.m. So it's quite a long day. All those meetings are being conducted virtually. Folks who want to attend can go to the city's website, www.ci.missoula.mt.us. There's a meeting tab down there in the middle of your screen. If you click that, you find a relevant agenda, you'll find how to register for all of these meetings. The shortcut link to get to register for our webinars is at www.missoulapublicmeetings.com. That's meetings, plural. Thanks.
Thanks, Marty. Any changes to the committee schedule from council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the public comment portion. This is an opportunity for public comment on items that are not currently on the agenda. There will be an opportunity later in the meeting for any of the agenda items, including the consent agenda, as well as the 2 public hearings, one of which is utility related, and the second one is a holding open of the budget committee, which will stay open following 2 weeks as well. So I will, at this point, go to the attendees, and I'll just remind folks, public comment is needs to get limited to 3 minutes. I'll work with you on that, but please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Mr.
Hi.
Larson.
How's it going? I'd like to draw some awareness to the city council as well as to the public about how this city council meeting in specific and the contact info that's put up on the slide for the public does not include a static Zoom meeting ID or a static telephone number to dial into. All the other Missoula city meetings have this. I don't know why this one doesn't. I know that you guys are erring in the side of openness in every point in the juncture, but I would suggest that we add the static meeting ID number and the static telephone dial-in number to actually make it accomplishable for the public to dial in. It's ridiculous that you do this for every other meeting except this one. But thank you for listening to me. I have some more stuff too. I'd like to go over claims stuff, but I won't if you'll allow me to do it later. And I'd like to, again, draw to the awareness of the public some serious overreactions by the Missoula Police Department. Within my own personal friend group, I have 4 individuals who have had serious overreactions for minor calls with the Missoula Police Department. Some of them involving a black truck. So I'd like to, a black truck with a U.S. Marshal. And so I'd like to draw that to the public's awareness and watch out. If you don't visibly look like you're from around here, you might get some extra interaction with MPD. I don't know. I'm just talking about what I know from my personal friend groups, and we're going to take it to be dealt with in front of the police commission. If you'll allow me, I'll save the rest of my commentary for the claims, or if you'd like me to air those right now, I will.
No, we'll take public comment on the consent agenda like we always do. So you'll be welcome to make public comment on that portion also.
Thank you.
Yep. Andrea Davis, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
Great, thank you. Good evening, President Von Lossberg and members of council. City Council received public comment at the August 12th Committee of the Whole meeting stating accusations against Homeward and Tamarack Property Management Company. I cannot or will not speak to details of our interactions with this person. For 26 years, Homeward has been dedicated to strengthening our communities through empowering education and homes people can afford. That includes procedures at our properties for items such as work orders, reasonable accommodations, grievances, and precautions being taken in response to COVID-19, portfolio-wide for the safety of our residents and our properties. You are amid your budgeting process for FY21, and as you know, our community is under serious pressure. I believe you are considering investment that helps create more homes Missoulians can afford. I urge you to support the Office of Housing and Community Development with the resources they need to help the nonprofit and private sector solve for home affordability with the aim of building a stronger community. Thank you for all you do. Bye-bye.
Oops, I need to unmute myself, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Blaine Doherty, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening, Council. My name is Blaine Doherty, and I was here to comment on public safety here in Missoula. I also really want to thank for the development of the proposal for $100,000 for public safety and investigation to how to create racial justice in here in Missoula. So very much appreciative of that. I wanted to speak essentially to just some concerns around the understanding of the systemic issues around racism that are held both by the mayor and the chief of police. Because I think that the mayor has said that, you know, the police are not broken. We have, like, you know, things to fix. And I don't think it's really within his grasp, but basically to determine whether or not that there are systemic racist problems in within the Missoula Police Department. Because I think there's abundance of evidence coming out of the community that there might be. And so at the very least, as pretty much everyone all over Missoula at their places of work, at least, are not answering the question of if we have systemic racism within our businesses or our homes or our communities, but how. And so I think that framing is a little troubling. And forgive me if Police Chief White has come out and said differently since then, but in a letter that he signed on to, as well as pretty much every major law enforcement within Western Montana signed on to, is a letter maybe in mid-July that I already commented on previously, but I think is applicable here, which is basically that they said, as police officer leaders in the state of Montana, we feel it is our obligation to speak out about the unnecessary injuries and deaths suffered by any persons at the hand of law enforcement who fail to refuse to live by our peace officer code of conduct ethics. We collectively acknowledge that incidents of excessive use of force, violence, and misconduct are unacceptable and contradictory to our professional training, ethic, and personal morals. I think the new light here that I want to bring is that instead of saying George Floyd, they say suffered by any persons. And so I think the lack of courage that our law enforcement leaders are showing in their inability to basically come out and state the 2020 equivalent of saying that segregation is wrong or that slavery is wrong, which is essentially that our justice system is systemically and endemically racist and has to be drastically reformed, is a huge point of concern. And I also want to challenge the notion and the narrative being aired about the way in which our Missoula Police Department came about to better investigate and change their response to sexual violence against primarily women in Missoula. And that's basically that they were investigated by the DOJ and they voluntarily undertook the changes that were requested. But I mean, from my understanding, that's under threat of lawsuit. And so I think as we move forward, wanting to really press and support any really powerful, independent oversight boards of the Missoula Police when it comes to systemic racism, instead of we just trust that they'll do the right thing. And I think just to kind of wrap some of this up, basically something that made that point more concerning to me was that Chief White mentioned the community safety or the Safe Neighborhoods program that was going on. And in looking that up, I came upon essentially this piece from Montana Public Radio, which basically says, the local and federal cooperation in Missoula County is a marked difference from just 4 years ago, where the two departments were mired in lawsuits over whether the Department of Justice had jurisdiction over the county office after the DOJ accused the county attorney's office of mishandling sexual assault cases in 2012. Missoula County Attorney Kristen Papps said having the Department of Justice bring all the local law enforcement to the table was like extending an olive branch. And I think that is really troubling that when—
Blaine, I need to ask you, we're about 4.5 minutes.
Oh, sorry about that. So basically, like, I don't think this change happened because the Missoula Police Department was like, oh, I'm sorry, we're wrong. It seems that they were forced through it through different avenues of power, and that we need to create those avenues of power in order to help them to hold the Missoula Police accountable. Thank you for your time. Good evening. Sorry for going over.
That's all right. Thank you. Will Festerman, can you hear okay?
Yep. Thank you for letting me speak. I just want to say again to encourage you all to divert funding from the police and towards social services. I've heard some of you express fear, either implicitly or explicitly, about what will happen if we have fewer police officers and resources for the police who will respond to calls. But the truth is that police really can't help in a lot of different situations. They can't connect people to social services. They can't help in a mental health crisis. They can't effectively de-escalate situations like a trained social worker could, or even any average unarmed community member. So they're not effective in so many cases to begin with. So they're not providing public safety to begin with. So if we have fewer police officers and less funding, that's not creating a problem. And I just want to stress that it is your responsibility, each one of you, to create and fund alternatives to police, existing ones and ones that have yet to exist, like the mobile crisis unit. And if you fail to do that, you're perpetuating racism in our city. And I want to end with the words of George Jackson: settle your quarrels, come together, understand the reality of our situation, understand that fascism is already here, that people are dying who could be saved, that generations more will die or live poor, butchered half-lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover your humanity and your love in revolution. Pass on the torch. Join us. Give up your life for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for my cat in the background. Apologies, I'm only saying a last name. Hess, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is Laurel Hess, and I live at 734 Defoe Street, and just wanted to provide a quick comment piggybacking off of something that I heard mentioned at the August 12th meeting, and then again brought up by another person providing public comment earlier this evening, and that is this idea that racism at the hands of police is something that is happening only in far off places. And I know that there's a lot of want and need for data around instances of racial bias and discrimination, and would just like to, I do have some statistics on that having to do with our local jail population, but would also just encourage all of you to equally value the lived experiences and voices of BIPOC people, and not necessarily need something to be presented always in a clean-cut statistic report. But I will say that between November 2017 and October 2019, on average, 17.2% of our non-contract and non-federal population incarcerated at the detention center. So that means folks who are incarcerated pre-trial or serving sentences, not people who are there waiting to be placed in like the mask facility or they're on federal holds. 17.2% of those people identified as Native American, compared to 4.3% of the population in our county. And recently, that has increased to closer to 23.5%. And that is despite my office. I work for what used to be called the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, but has received money to specifically address ethnic and racial disparities in our local criminal justice system. And so I would encourage you to remember those numbers, remember that there are people behind statistics, and take that into account. Those are pretty alarming numbers, especially as we look at everything that's going on with COVID as well. And then I would just like to point out that if y'all have access, and I can share what I have access to as well, but research that's been done on implicit bias trainings. I know it's something that through our MacArthur grant, I've had a lot of access to what other jurisdictions across the country are doing as far as implicit bias training, and also just revisiting it entirely due to its effectiveness, specifically looking at a 2015 article in the University of Hawaii Law Review that really challenged its usefulness and discusses the lack of empirical evidence around its effectiveness. So just wanted to point those things out, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm probably not going to get the name correct. Ludmila Karaseva. Can you hear okay?
Yes, I can. It's Karasova, but that's okay. It's good enough.
My apologies.
No worries. My name is Ludmila Karasova. I'm 21 years old. I'm a social work student at the University of Montana. To be honest, I'm kind of disgusted. I'm honestly came into this meeting and I've heard so much, and I'm really upset at how I looked over the budget, and I've been doing this for a while, and I've looked over the proposed budget for 2021, and I'm honestly disgusted. I couldn't even find social services, but that's okay. I used 2020. And I know everybody here is doing their best, and you guys are just trying, and we're all trying to do our best here. But the fact that the total police budget for this upcoming 2021 proposed budget is $19 million, roughly. It's $19,024,986. That's a 3.44% change in last year's. Whereas, and that's $633,356 of a change of last year's. Whereas housing, the proposed budget is $2,221,785. That is a 4.17% change, and it is $88,966 change. But the fact of the matter is, it's only 4% of the increase that the police department is having. It is, well, not 4%, I apologize. It's a little bit higher, but honestly, the reason I don't, like a former citizen said, the fact that we do have to spew statistics is really unnerving to me. That we do have to go look through this and tell you guys why this is a problem is really unsettling to me. The fact that in 2020, social and economic services had 0.2% of the budget, whereas public safety had 18.8% of the budget was, and then that makes me upset into why we have the question of, well, why, if we got rid of police officers, what would we do? Well, we could give that, and not even rid, I apologize, not rid, that is not proper language. English is my second language, but at least defunding it to a point, and when we say defund, it means cut back on the amount of funding. When we give that to social workers, to social services, to housing, to mental health, you can automatically, you can see throughout the country and in other countries that has incredibly decreased crime rates. It has helped people get the right services they need. And it has overall increased the quality of life for like humans everywhere. So what I don't understand is why we keep increasing the budget to have a more, quote, educated police force, when the fact of the matter, we have proven time and time again that that money isn't educating them. It's not working. It's been shown. The police brutality just keeps getting worse. They're not getting more educated. It just keeps gaining into this, what we currently have, a fascist state. And I think it's so incredibly important to realize, okay, so what if we did cut some funding from the police? Oh no, there wouldn't be enough services currently with the budget that we have. No, because we are not even giving the proper funding to the places that would prevent it rather than just react to it. I personally I'm a barista, and I work, I don't want to say the place of residency, but I'm a barista, and I have had police officers come in to talk to me and be like, I have to kick this person out. And I have no idea what to do. I feel awful. I am not trained to do this. A police officer who was even admitted, I am not trained to do this. All I can do is kick them out. into the cold in the winter. And I think that fully encompasses the issue. Thank you so much for letting me have my time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And just a reminder to folks, we do have an opportunity during the public hearing for the budget to comment if your comment is on the budget. Devin, and now I can't see your last name, I apologize.
No worries. You probably would have messed it up anyways. It's a hard one. That being said, hi everyone. My name is Devin Jacaruso. I'm in Ward 5. I'm calling in from the perspective of a preschool teacher, although I did quit recently because my boss is not the best. But that being said, I'm calling in favor of defunding the police from the perspective of a preschool teacher, because as a preschool teacher, when kids are misbehaving, we don't punish them, we don't spank them, we don't hit them because it's illegal and because it doesn't help them grow. What we try and figure out is, why are they doing that? What is causing them to do whatever they're doing that's not okay? Why are they hitting that kid? Why are they misbehaving in other ways? And usually the reason they're misbehaving, the reason they're harming other people, isn't because they're bad people that need to be punished. It's because they have a need that hasn't been addressed. And because they haven't had that need addressed, they need to take it out on something. I mean, it's very similar to, like, yeah. Just for example, I had a kid once who was like punching kids at the lunch table whenever they would come near his food. And then later on, we found out that he wasn't getting enough food at home, and that's why he was doing that. To cross-apply that, I guess the point is, people are a product of their conditions. And to cross-apply that to us, that hasn't changed. We're still a product of our conditions, and people aren't out on the streets doing drugs, harming other people, committing theft and all of the crimes that police are arresting people for because they're bad people who need to be punished. They're committing crimes because they need to do so to survive. They're doing so because they have suffered harm themselves and are not getting the resources that they need. I hope this makes sense and all of you are following. I hope you're all paying attention as well. Looks like some of you on your phones. That being said, we really need to place more of an emphasis on community care versus putting more money into police. We do not need more money to give them upgraded riot gear. I think that's absurd. That implies that we already have riot gear and we need to upgrade it. When has there ever been a riot in Missoula? That is entirely impractical. And it would make much more sense in my mind if we were putting that money into community resources that are going to help our community members get the resources that they need, have a life that's fulfilling and sustainable, and address the harm that they're causing at the root of everything. By funding the police, we are investing in punishment versus community care. And to really care for our community and protect our community, we need to defund the police, invest in housing, invest in the mobile crisis unit, because these are practical choices as well. I know for a fact that police officers are not particularly prepared to deal with mental health crises. So why are we sending them to deal with that? Why are we paying for more officers to deal with these crises, when we could send a mobile crisis unit and spend a little bit more money on that? The police have multiple jobs that they have to do, way too much for any one person to take on, no matter how much training they get. It would be astronomically more practical if we were putting more funding into different resources for different crises that our community is facing versus continuing to fund the police. That being said, thank you so much for your time, and you all have a good rest of your day.
Andy Hosel, you've got the floor.
Hi there, Andy Helsel, Ward 2. I'm gonna just say something different today. I appreciate the opportunity to offer public comment. Every day, about every day I go for 2 walks, one with my 6-year-old daughter and one by myself at night. During the walk with my 6-year-old daughter, she designs what she calls a game, which is ultimately a story. We each play a character and we imagine where we're going and what we're doing. And her imagination is extraordinary. I by no means expect any of you to match her level of imagination, because if you tried, you would fail. But I do ask that when we think about whatever faces us, you know, as a socialist, I think about this because I think people fail to be able to really envision what an end to capitalism would look like. They fail to picture it in their minds, and we fail oftentimes as organizers and as activists to paint that picture for people. I think what happens with regard to policing, with regard to other community issues that we face, is that we lack imagination. We think we exist in a system where police has always been necessary, when in fact that's not true. We think we exist in a system where if we give some little bit less money to policing, we're going to suddenly have lawlessness, which is in fact not true. So all of the things that are holding you back as government officials, as elected members of this community, in my mind, are about an inability to truly imagine a different reality and a different future. To truly be able to imagine what it might be like when one of my young clients is feeling suicidal or is ungovernable in their foster home and can be helped with somebody who is not an armed police officer. When the man that I speak to every single day on the North Side pedestrian bridge, who cannot live at the POB for a variety of reasons, has a crisis, and he knows that he is going to be aided by sufficient supports in this community, and that he doesn't have to seek police to have help. When I know that the person who walks by after me isn't going to panic if he's having a reaction to something and immediately call the police, I can envision that. I can imagine what that world would look like. And I ask that you take some time to truly use your imagination, to revisit what it's like to be a 6-year-old walking down the street, creating a story in her mind and sharing it with the people that she loves. And imagine what your community could be if you truly set aside this idea that this is all there is, this is all we have to solve these problems, because it's not. It's really not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in council committees and placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings by voting on them as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud so citizens watching on MCAT or one of the other platforms will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote. We have 2 items. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Ron Mossberg. I just wanted to note for the record that City Council also received 2 public comments via your council agenda this evening, and they are now published. One from Emily Withnall and another from Kelly Sherman. So you might want to check those out. And tonight's consent agenda, as President Von Mossberg indicated, only has 2 items. The first is to approve claims in the amount of $1,229,323.64 for checks that are dated August 18th of 2020. And number 2 is to set a public hearing on September 14th on a resolution amending the engineering fee schedule to remove the stormwater pollution prevention program and erosion control permits and establish the stormwater permit and dry well approval.
Got it. Thank you. I will go to public comment on the consent agenda. Mr. Larson? On the
Yes,
consent agenda?
I'm wanting to know about the $32,000 for arbitration that's to be paid from the water department to Boone Carlberg. This is one of many payments to Boone Carlberg regarding the acquisition of the water company. There's also another $13,000 payment, nearly $13,000 to a Seattle-based law firm named Perkins Coie. And I've requested all these documents and all the payments, historical payments from the city to Boone Carlberg and all vendors regarding this matter. And as far as I can tell, talking to the finance department, they're fairly easy to come upon. But I've kind of hit a brick wall after requesting documents and unduly burdening the system. I just want to know what's going on, as do the rest of my community members. So I'd suggest you guys do an update. I've written city council to that effect, and it's important that we let everyone know what the projected legal fees for this transaction are. They're not in the budget. They weren't in last year's budget, and I've searched high and low. If you can direct me to where that line item is, I'd love to look at it. The other thing I'd like to address is the late fee for rent to Jim Mayer. Why are we paying $1.3 thousand for a late fee on any of our properties as a city? I thought that's what we do. We pay our bills. The other thing I'd like to point out is the $11,000 to Triple Tree Engineering Incorporated, which is marked now as a quiet traffic zone study, which I believe was a quiet train study in August when you paid them $25,000. Again, these are just examples of how we're just spending money willy-nilly at the city with no accountability and no telling the public. I'd also like to congratulate Chief White for being reimbursed for his legal equivalency test, which is required for all new police officers to be employed in the state of Montana. They're required to do this, and it includes a background check. Coincidentally, last week, I requested from HR all of the hiring documents related to Chief White. So I find it a little funny that right at the end of the deadline, he's going to get his legal equivalency test. It begs the question, was he ever going to do it? Because now it looks like that class is completing in December, right at the deadline. And so I'm sure he'll pass, as he's very experienced, but I'd like to know what shows up on his background check. And I don't know, it's a reoccurring theme that I don't have access to a lot of these documents and a lot of these things, which are public information. So I'd like to kind of acclimate the other public commentators on the line here, so that they know what to expect as far as action from you guys. I'd expect to see you guys vote no on this, because there's on the claims, because there's so much here that is just unexplained and completely frivolous. Thank you.
Apologies. Questions, comments from council members? Ms. Vasika.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Larson kind of beat me to the punch there. I was going to bring up the $32,000 for the arbitration costs, but Mr. Larson beat me to the punch, so I would like to separate the claims out and vote on that separately, please, because I do not support that. Thank you.
Yep, we can separate that item. You want to separate the claims item, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
I just wanted to say that regarding the late fee payment on the rental payment, I spoke with Ms. Griffin earlier today via email, and there was a late payment that was a mistake. The accounts payable clerk that missed that deadline is no longer employed by the city. And frankly, the fact that we've outgrown our facilities and have rentals, numerous rental locations because we've outgrown our facilities, kind of begs the question of the project of looking at the federal building so that we are all in one place and this doesn't happen again. So just wanted to clarify that on the record. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Von Lossberg. And my question is to you, actually, in regards to updates regarding the ongoing litigation from the water company. I think I have a pretty updated tally, and I think we're at over a dozen updates to the community about the various forms of litigation and the subsequent significant savings to taxpayer or to ratepayers on the water litigation, and it is still ongoing. And we had an update within the last 6 weeks, if I do have my committee calendar memory correct. Am I correct in that, Mr. Von Lossberg?
I am going to again apologize for my cat. So look, on the water thing, we're actually in excess of 60 public meetings over the years relative to the water acquisition, both the acquisition and the bad faith case, which are two related but separate things. Both of them have received council approval. It's very clear that not all council members approve with the action, but those have been duly authorized by votes of council. I'm happy to schedule in committee of the whole another update on water litigation. We actually just received a favorable ruling at the Montana Supreme Court relative to the Department of Revenue case, and that would be great to schedule an update in, as well as the arbitration fees, which are a part of the bad faith case, and again was approved by a vote of this body. But I'm happy to schedule another update on those. We have not had as many since the acquisition was complete some time ago, but there is ongoing litigation that the DOR case was associated with the acquisition. The arbitration fees are associated with the bad faith case. Hopefully that answered your question, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments from council? So we talked about the water thing. I'll take the opportunity to also mention that there was an approved project through MRA in the district with a quiet zone at the railroad crossing, and that's a budgeted item, and the expenditures are in line with the budget that was approved on that work. And Triple Tree Engineering, if I'm remembering the firm correct, is the contractor there. They're the ones that worked on the quiet zones at the railroad in Helena. Seeing no more questions or comments from council members, we'll have a roll call vote on, bear with me, item 5.1, which is claims.
Okay, on the claims, that's the city's accounts payable. Anderson. Anderson?
Sorry, yes.
Becerra?
Yes.
Contos?
Yes.
Herb?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Basika?
No.
Von Lossberg?
Yes.
And West?
Yes.
And would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
Right. And a roll call vote on item 5.2.
This is on the resolution with those on that fee schedule for engineering and the stormwater pollution prevention program. Start this round with Becerra. I think Becerra voted yes. Yes. Contos.
Yes.
Harp.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Basika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And would any of you like to change your vote on that item? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
Thank you. We'll move on. We have no items under comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum, nor do we have any special presentations. Agenda item 8 is public hearings. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor will invite community comment. The council normally votes on the same night as the public hearing, unless one council member requests that it be returned to a council committee for further consideration. And during the pandemic, we've been holding public hearings open a week and taking final consideration, which is the next agenda item following week. And we will do that with the first item. The budget is being held over on several days, tonight being one of those, with final action on the 31st. But our first one is an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code Chapter 13.17 and a resolution amending the utility rate schedule. And I believe we'll get a brief staff report from Katie.
Good evening, Council. I'm Katie Emery, Admin Services Manager for the Public Works Department. So next week, I am asking all of you under final consideration to adopt or deny an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code, Chapter 13.17, entitled Waterline Loan Program by amending Section 13.17.050 to state utility rate schedule instead of Missoula Water Division rate schedule, and loan processing fee instead of administrative fee, and a resolution amending the utility rate schedule to include the loan processing fee. Currently, we do not have the Missoula Water Division rate schedule anymore. We combined all the utilities into the utility rate schedule. And then I also wanted to change the administrative fee to best reflect what our customers are paying for with a loan processing fee term change.
Thank you. And Ms. Emery, all the documents, the resolution are attached under this item. And what was the date that we heard this in committee, if folks are interested? Do you recall?
That would have been July 29th.
Right. So if folks are interested in any additional information on the item, the Public Works Committee of July 29th would have that information, and Councilwoman Becerra is the chair of that. Ms. Vasika, you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to double check that this is just changing verbiage and wording. It's not increasing or adding any new fees. Is that right?
That is correct. Yep, just terminology changes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Sandra. With that, I will open the public hearing. Would any of the attendees like to comment on this item? Not seeing anybody, which is not terribly surprising. I will close the public hearing, and we will hold this over, as is our practice, for final consideration next week. Thank you, Ms. Emery, and thank you, Mr. Bowman, for being online.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Our next item is a continuation of the fiscal year 2021 budget. As I said, this will continue to be held open tonight. It was open last week, and then next week, and final consideration on the 31st. There was a staff presentation last week about the budget. I'd ask Mr. Bickle if he could just follow up on the new request document at the budget portal. That was a discussion. Ms. Merritt had some questions about that, and that's been updated. So Dale, could you inform the council and public about that?
Good evening, Dale Bickle, City's Chief Administrative Officer. I'll share my screen and just navigate to the spreadsheet you're speaking with for the public here. So if you start at the city homepage and you see this on the screen. This is right on the main city homepage. This is a headline. It has this big tile for follow the city budget. And that takes you to all of the budget documents. So it has a history of all of the meetings and all of the documents. It also has a link to our Engage Missoula page where people can make comments and post questions. This link takes you to the finance page where there is a series of budget documents listed. And this is the site that has all of the documents from all the meetings, details on all of the new requests. Specifically, Councilman von Lossberg was talking about the new requests that are included in the mayor's budget. That is this new request link here that was indicated, that was updated as of 8/14/20. What changed is to make it more clear what was funded and what was not funded so far in the mayor's budget. The budget is a constantly changing document, though there are no or very small changes to this document, and there would have been just corrections in numbers. But however, at Budget Committee of the Whole this Wednesday, the capital improvement program will be presented, and so that link and how that links to the operating budget will be presented. So that may change the look of this slightly based on the results of that. So here is a list of by department, all of the requests, whether they are funded or not funded in the budget, and further to the right is the source of the funding where the new requests are coming from. I won't go through those in detail now based on the presentation last week, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Dale. And I think it's also worth mentioning that the administration's budget at this time contemplates no change to the mill rate, correct? No increase in the tax rate.
That's correct. We were able to do this, propose this budget without an increase in mill levies.
Thanks. Any questions before I go to, any questions from council before I open the continuation of the public hearing? Okay, you can go ahead, Dale, and stop sharing the screen. With that, I will continue the public hearing. Oh, sorry, a couple of questions from council members first. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. You can't find the button to raise your hand when someone, like when Dale was sharing his, so I think that's why we were waving at you. So unfortunately, because my questions were back on that, I think it would be helpful if Mr. Bickle wouldn't mind sharing his screen again to actually walk us through that document. I know I've been sending that link to a lot of my constituents to understand kind of what the various columns mean when you see, under the section the mayor proposed, and then, fund balance, taxable. I know we have quite a few people who are joining us on the meeting as well as watching through various forums. And I've been sending that to constituents. And so I think since you brought up the form, if you wouldn't mind walking us through just super quickly, I think it'd be very important. So thank you.
So I have the document up again. I think it is quite small on my screen, so I'm assuming it is that way for public too. Let me see if I can figure out how to make it a little bit bigger just to get to the column headings. So I'll start with the column descriptions. So the departments are listed here. And again, if you wanted to see the specific detail on any of these requests, they will be included back on that finance page by meeting date. You can look at what department it is and look for their meeting date. The amount that the department requested related to it. The rating is the type of request it is, and it's a tool we use and our finance department uses to on the type of request. Is it a contractual obligation? Is it maintaining level of service? Is it a new, or is it expanding level of service? Moving further to the right, this shows whether what the funding source is and the total funded. You can see a lot of these are non-tax funded. So these are either grants or other sources of funding other than property taxes, fees. We're able to use our cash reserves in many instances in order to fund these. So you can see the total funded, and then also we just have the total not funded. The taxes and assessments column, those are related to items that are proposed to be funded with taxes. Any of the amounts proposed in there are within our current mill levies. And you can see the non-tax sources of revenue where most of everything is funded are in the terms of grants or in cash reserves that we have.
Ms. Anderson, does that answer your question?
Yes. So yes, that's exactly perfect. That's what I wanted to kind of be able to draw people's attention to the differentiation of, what we're using our property taxes for, grants or fees, or funds that we have set aside. So thank you so much.
Thanks. So Dale, for instance, lower down and of great interest to the community is the Housing Trust Fund. You don't need to bring it back up, but that showed a $750,000 investment in the Housing Trust Fund, and it's listed not under the tax funded. It is a general fund investment, but it is within the current mill rate. Is that a fair way to explain it?
Yes, that's correct. We're using our excess cash reserves to be able to fund that.
Thanks. Ms. Merritt.
I didn't catch that last part of what Dale just said. Can you repeat that? I just couldn't.
The contribution, the $750,000 contribution to seed the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is paid from general fund excess cash reserves beyond our reserve requirements.
Okay. I think I might just have to have some offline discussions to understand that the column of numbers that's listed as non-tax sources. So I just wanted to say thanks to Dale for getting this updated and including the column that I think that was giving me a lot of confusion before. So now we've got the total not funded column that helps us understand what the changes that are being proposed as a result of our actual revenue numbers. And I think, have I got that right? So for the initial sheet that we saw like this was based on just what our projections were for those revenue numbers. And now this is what what the mayor's proposing based on our actual revenue numbers. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Becerra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dale, if I remember correctly, it might have been Councilwoman Merritt who asked that a updated date be added to the document, because as you said, it's evolving document. So it would be good, I think, for the public to know what the last time it was updated to reflect the changes based on new information or requests or meetings. Did I miss that? I'm not seeing it on the website, and I think it would add a little bit of clarity.
We did put a date on the link of the document itself.
Okay.
But we can also add a date stamp we made on that document as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think that would do it. It was in a hyperlink, but not in the document. So let's just add it to the document as well. Ms. Harp.
Thanks, Brian. I have to concur that sometimes this seems kind of confusing, even for those of us who might be unfamiliar with numbers. So Dale, if you would just be so kind, can you take us through a couple of line items just so that we all understand that when we see in regards to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, for example, on the far right, we have that non-tax sources of $750,000 in that particular row. And that effectively gets moved over into the column for under the mayor's funded, non-tax funded item, correct? As part of the general fund.
My screen is back up.
Okay.
Let's see if I can navigate. So I will use the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is at the bottom of the screen. And it's a $750,000 investment, new program. And with how the spreadsheet work, it doesn't feed into our accounting system. This is a presentation document. So this is telling you for all these details what is included in the mayor's budget. So there is this non-tax funded portion, mayor funded here, and the total funded. As you scroll over farther to the right, it provides just a little more detail of what that non-tax funding is. And in this case, it's $750,000 in fund balance. This is cash reserves that we have beyond what beyond what our policy says we should have. We had a strong budget performance year in FY20, and we're going to take some of those budgetary savings and invest that in the housing trust.
Excellent. And just a couple of follow-ups. So if the mayor was proposing a increase to the taxes or to our mills, we would see that in a different column. Can you speak to where that we would find that?
It's in the taxes plus assessments column. There are a couple of numbers that are listed in that number. You can see that related to facilities and development services. Those ones are actually not funded. But in what would happen in previous budgets is that as council deliberated, what we can do is plug those numbers in and have a real-time calculation of what the effect of the mills would be. And this spreadsheet will do that too. It's just that we have not we don't have a mill levy increase in this budget.
It's not live. And then just to contrast this conversation a little bit with the permissive medical levy, can you explain that to us as well?
The permissive medical levy is a mechanism, a tax mechanism that we can use to levy additional mills outside our mill levy cap. And in this budget, we proposed based on work by our actuaries are suggesting we have a 3% increase in our premium to maintain our health insurance benefits. We are proposing to use the permissive medical levy to pay for that, partially pay for that premium increase. However, there is an offsetting mill levy decrease in other areas, including the general fund, to offset that.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate the explanation.
Sorry, Ms. Vasico.
Thank you. So I can ask this question off air too if it is not appropriate for this, but regarding taxes, so I'm not a homeowner, I'm renting. And last year my my landlord paid $5,208 in property taxes last year. So with the with no increase in property taxes and no increase in mills, if the valuation of my house went up, then his total money out of pocket will increase from that $5,208 this year. Is that correct?
That is correct if whichever
because
tax
the total valuation of the house went up, so therefore the total money out of his pocket will go up.
If the jurisdiction did not lower mill levies, then yes, that is the case. Also want to point out that this year is not a valuation year, so the taxable value should not change on a property unless there was new construction on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. That helps out.
Yeah, I just want to repeat that because it might have gotten a little garbled. So we're in the second year of a Department of Revenue assessment period. So unless, as Dale said, I forget the threshold on major change, but my wife and I, our home, the property value is not changing this year because we're in the second year of the assessment where there's no change. So if there's no change to the mill rate, there's no change to the property taxes. All right.
Great
not
news,
seeing
thank
any
you.
other hand. Sorry, Sandra. Oh, okay, good. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, President von Lossberg, and I think that that's an excellent explanation. I do, however, I'd be remiss to point out that we are not the only taxing jurisdiction that makes up a property tax. We are one of 3 counties and schools and the city council, the city, and we're actually the one that makes up the lowest. So I think that that's an important, that we're setting expectations that for the city portion, under this proposed budget, we are not proposing any tax increases. And because it is the second year of an evaluation cycle, no one's home should go up unless it has significant improvement. However, if the county or the schools districts decide to raise taxes, then some people's tax bills may go up, but that's because those separate taxing jurisdictions have made changes to their budgets.
Yep. Thanks for the clarification. The city property taxes are about 29–30% of people's property tax bill. School districts, schools are the largest taxing jurisdiction, and then the county is in there also. Ms. Cheryl.
Ms. Anderson, thank you for pointing that out. During my campaign, I talked about that a lot, but one of the things you can do if you're looking at your tax bill as it comes this year is put last year's and this year's beside each other, look at the different taxing jurisdictions, and then you'll be able to kind of track what each one has done. So I think that is really important to point out that we are only 29% of the tax bill.
Yep. Ms. Merritt, did your question get answered? Okay. All right, not seeing any other hands. I'm gonna continue the public comment, the public hearing.
President von Lossberg, I just wanted to point out that we have 2 comments that have been submitted via your agenda this evening under the budget. One is from Matt Larson and the other is from Katie Kane, and those are published, and you can take a look at those in addition to the verbal comment you'll hear this evening. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Rabine. I've got a caller ending in 0957. Hello, caller. Can you hear us okay? Caller ending in 0957. Hi there. So we have a phone-in caller that had their hand raised. Phone number ending 0957. Did you want to give public comment? Okay, I will, not hearing you at all. I will, oh, are you there? Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to provide public comment? Ms. Holzel?
Hi there. Sorry, the cursor was being difficult. I appreciate opportunity to comment specifically on the budget. Again, I want to talk mostly tonight about mental health services. This is an area I've said before. I have a great deal of experience. I've worked in mental health in Missoula for almost 20 years now. I guess first I'll start with, if we are going to question whether or not the police department can do its job with any amount of decreased funding, I think we should really look to mental health professionals, other social workers and teachers who have been doing their jobs with not even remotely enough funding for basically for all of time. So I think that the police department could swallow a little bit of a budget cut. There's been a massive deterioration of mental health services across the country, especially in Montana. My agency, for example, over the course of the last number of years has no longer been able to provide services to kids and families that we have provided for a long time and we offer the lowest level of care. We offer in-home support services. We offer outpatient therapy. We offer mental health services mental health aids, meaning like one-on-one interactions for kids. Those are things that keep kids out of hospitals. Those are things that keep kids out of juvenile detention. They're things that are truly at the lowest tier of services. And I understand that that's not 100% under the city's budget. That's a state issue and a national issue as well. But it is important because everything that we're doing here ends up costing more the way we're doing it. When we're using police and jails and hospitals to address mental health crises in our communities, it costs more and it's not efficient. It's not effective, I mean. It doesn't actually work. It just, people get cycled through and through and through. So, I mean, and police are particularly ill-suited to these jobs, regardless of the training that they may or may not be getting. I want to draw your attention to the fact that 1 in every 4 police killings is of a person with a mental illness. That means that people with mental illness are 16 times more likely to be killed by police than other people. People with a mental illness are not 16 times more likely to engage in a violent crime, in case that was where your mind may have gone. Street triage teams or mobile crisis units, which I can guarantee you, if you do offer more funding towards, you're still going to hear from me that that's not sufficient, because we do need a actual place for people to be. But when they are utilized, they are able to engage people with an attitude of care rather than an attitude of, I'm here to neutralize a threat, which is what police do. Again, anywhere from 5 to 20 of all police incidents involve a person with a mental illness. 2%, excuse me. We're basically criminalizing mental health at this point. When we are using police officers to address mental health issues, mental health crises in our community, we are criminalizing mental health. We've already done that with regard to poverty, and there is no question about how wrong and detrimental that is to our society as a whole. We are doing that to people who live with mental illness. When you allow these issues to be policed, you're basically saying that you prioritize white people's comfort and you prioritize property, because oftentimes people with mental illness are being policed because they're considered a nuisance. Whether they're downtown in front of businesses, and gosh, the downtown business district, district does not want people with mental illness hanging out in front of their businesses, because that might scare customers away. When you continue to put funding towards policing people with mental illness, you say that the comfort of those business owners and the comfort of those customers, often white elites, is more important to you than the long-term mental health care of your community members. Again, your budget is a moral document. And right now, what it represents is not particularly, they're not morals that I look for in people who are my leaders and who are our elected officials. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. Eleanor Smith, can you hear us okay?
Yes, thank you. Hear me?
Yes, we can. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, City Council. My name is Eleanor Smith. I live at 920 Sherwood Street here in Missoula. I just wanted to thank the council for allowing me to comment this evening and allowing a robust public discussion on this issue. I would encourage further investments from police to go into other services. Black, Indigenous, Latinx Missoulans and Missoulians with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by over-policing, and I think a lot of us are interested in proven outcomes that are favorable for everyone who's living in Missoula. And I think this is an opportunity to consider what services are provided by police and how we can better serve the town of Missoula by professionals and programs that are specifically designed to address our needs. Myself personally, I am white, and I have experienced a lot of difficult conversations and reckonings with myself about the ways that I have said things and perpetuated in systems of oppression and benefited from white supremacy. And I think it's really hard to feel like we as white people benefit and participate in these systems. But because of that, I think we are much more responsible for changing things. And I think Missoula has a real opportunity as a progressive city to be a leader on this issue. And so I just thank everyone on the council for considering our role and the power that we have in the systems that we hold power within. And I hope that we can all consider better outcomes for the most vulnerable people in Missoula, which are people of color and folks who live with disabilities and folks who live with mental illness. So thanks again for allowing me to speak. And I hope you all consider some reshuffling of funds.
Thank you, Eleanor Smith. Izzy Milch. Izzy, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add my voice to the many others that are urging you to reconsider the budget as it stands and reallocate some of this funding from policing into things like the mobile crisis response unit. There's plenty of evidence that things like implicit bias training don't produce particularly favorable outcomes for the people that they're intended to protect, and that funding community resources do produce those outcomes. So I want to strongly encourage that. I know there are concerns about safety when police are defunded, and I think one of many, many examples that you can consider is that Missoula Police Department hasn't been wearing masks in public, including bike cops that come in close proximity with citizens. I think that's a really excellent example of police not being particularly interested in the safety of their community. And yeah, just wanted to encourage you all to think about where else that money could really provide real impact. And thank you all for your time and your patience.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, I've got Dane Wolf. Dane, can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you.
Yep.
And I appreciate the opportunity to comment publicly. You know, keeping in tune with what other community members have said, you know, there's been a national and local magnification of obviously of what police are doing in our communities and ties with white supremacy. There were some concerns voiced about a background check being completed on our new police chief, Jason White. That's kind of running to the end of the deadline for what he had available. I have some members of the community that have been speaking to each other, and there's some concern of a business that he owned in the past, the Iron Cross Ranch Incorporated, which I don't know if that's anything that's been addressed. You know, the Iron Cross was a Medal of Honor given in Nazi Germany. And the name alone is concerning. The two addresses listed in his business paperwork, you know, are not ranches, they're residential addresses. And that's something that some community members are very concerned about, especially given the Sacramento CHP's documented involvement with white supremacists. And that's something that I would like addressed as a community member, since he's, you know, now here, hasn't even taken a background check. It's very concerning to me. The chief financial officer listed on the documentation of it is a man named Jeet White, you know, a name of a World War II vehicle. and it doesn't seem like too far of a disconnection that this business was named after a World War II Medal of Honor, and it's an odd association. So that's what I would like to state publicly. I have some concerns.
Thank you for your public comment. All right, I don't have anyone else in the queue. As I mentioned, the public hearing will continue next week. As I've said a few times, I want to make sure people are aware we have a land use item next week. So the public hearing for the budget for this evening is closed and will be continued next week. Want everyone to be aware, as we've said before, there's a land use item with a lot of public hearing next Monday. There'll be a lot of interest from the public in that topic. So both public hearings will be open that night, but we recognize that that's not a good night to close the public hearing and take action. And that's why we're continuing to the 31st for the budget and final action. And just want to make sure everybody is familiar with that. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, all of the venues and platforms to provide public comment on the budget, email, voicemail, the Engage Missoula site remain at people's disposal outside of the our council meetings. So with that, bear with me. We will move on. We have no items under final consideration for this evening. I will pass on communications from the mayor. We'll go to general comments of city council. I'm going to try doing this as I see you on the screen. We'll see how that works. Ms. Jones.
I will pass. Thank you.
Ms. Hart.
Thanks. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of my fellow Kiwanians, but more importantly to Service Club folks throughout our community. Whether you are a Lion, a Rotarian, a Kiwanian, an optimist, a Seroptimist, an Exchange Club member, it doesn't matter. I know each and every one of you have really missed out on the sense of community. And in all honesty, it is from my fellow Kiwanians over the last 18 years that I have learned a great deal of what makes our community tick. So if you are a new member of our Missoula community and you are trying to figure out a way to learn more about what we do, I encourage you to join a service organization. You will never regret it. You find that people of different ideologies come together for a common cause, oftentimes to improve the lives of children. Today, it's very strange to be a part of a service club and yet not get to meet. So please be patient, but it's something that I think is really critical. So to all of you out there, thank you for the generations that have come before you, that have created the parks that we enjoy, that have given to places like Watson's, that provide, I even remember early on, a trailer for our fire department so that they could teach kids how to prevent fires. All these things matter, and it's the social fabric that has been oftentimes missing. It's an aging organization, no matter which service club you go to. And at the age of 30, I joined mine. Now today, my Kiwanis Club has a lot of folks under the age of 60, and then they're really trying to make a difference. And it doesn't matter what political party you belong to, because it's irrelevant. As long as you care about this place, which we all do, we find common ground and we make a difference. Thank you.
Ms. Merritt.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that plans and scheduling for the start of the school year are still shifting a little bit. So anyone who hasn't checked their email or the updated MCPS website for the latest updates, you definitely should go check that out. And again, I want to thank Superintendent Watson and all of the folks who have worked so hard to try and make something work for our students this fall. I know it's been a tough challenge. I also, on a unrelated note, want to give a shout out to Kathy Campbell, the president of the board at the Montana Senior Center, as she made a point of making sure that every one of us got a copy of their newsletter, and to put it in people's minds that the Senior Center is also, as Ms. Harp kind of touched on, without being able to get together and do some of the fundraising and activities that they've been able to do in the past, that their budget is hurting. So keep that in mind. If you are able to give, the Senior Center is an awesome organization to support. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. Actually, Ms. Merritt kind of said what I was going to say, just kind of reminding people that school's going back next week, and we're going to all have to be really careful. It's scary. It's good, but it's scary. And just, Rob Watson has been incredible as far as communicating with us regularly. The ground is shifting underneath them as they plan. And so I know it's been really hard, and they've come up with some good ideas, including, I think, for the high schoolers, the block schedule. Sorry, I'll turn that off. And so also, on another note that I think she touched on, is the keep in mind all your nonprofits that have been struggling, that didn't get to have their banquets, that didn't get to have their the Missoula Marathon, all these things. So if you're in a position to give to some of those, I would suggest you really, really think about it this year. It's going to be a hard end of the year for some of those organizations that we want to be around after COVID is gone.
Ms. West?
Pass.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Von Lossberg, President Von Lossberg, and thank you to my fellow council members for the shout outs to the school board. Gosh, what a time to be trying to navigate all that, but also to all the parents of all the kiddos. I know our little nephew is so excited about going back to school, and that may not be the case. So gosh, I mean, everyone is just being asked to do so much, and I think we're really rallying as a community. That being said, I do want to acknowledge that we did lose another member of our community over the weekend to the COVID virus, and there's a family in our midst who is mourning the loss of that family member. And as we continue to go about doing our navigating this, and we all wear our masks and do our social distancing and wash our hands and take all the precautions, we do this so that when this is all over, everyone is there to gather again and celebrate and be a member of our community. So it's not just doing it for you, it's doing for everyone else. And there's a family in our midst that is suffering right now, so we should keep that all in mind as we continue to move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Becerra.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts. The budget season every year is a difficult time for City Council and for our community. Every year it highlights our priorities, responsibilities, commitments, vision. And so I want to thank everyone who has been coming to provide public comment, and I'm sure will continue to come to our meetings to provide public comment. It shows that you are committed to working towards a better Missoula, and that's what we all want. And so I just want to ask that we start showing the qualities and humanity that we want to see represent our community, and that is respect, kindness, We are all working towards making this a better place for everyone, no matter what your age, your skin color. So I ask that we exercise the qualities that we want to see in our community. Thanks.
Mr. Contos,
Pass.
Ms. Vasika.
I'll pass as well. Thank you.
Don't think I missed anybody. We don't have any items under committee reports this evening. No items under new business. Are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none. No. Are there any miscellaneous communications, petitions, reports, and announcements? Seeing none. Thank you all for your service. Thank you to the public for participating this evening. And we will be adjourned.
Thank you.